Picture this. You're looking at our Earth from thousands of kilometers out in space. It looks like this serene, beautiful blue marble floating in the dark. Entirely peaceful, right? But as we zoom in, humanity's timeline paints a starkly different picture, one marked by a really long, devastating history of conflict. In this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the history of human warfare, how it fundamentally shaped our civilization, and most importantly, the profound impact it has had on ordinary people.
Which brings us to a massive, difficult question. Why have humans fought each other for thousands of years? You see, war isn't just a single, isolated event. It's a recurring, deeply entrenched part of the human story. And it really forces us to ask ourselves, how did we go from collaborating to build these incredible early civilizations to systematically destroying them?
Part 1. The Dawn of Conflict.
So, as early human societies grew, well, so did the friction between them. In the earliest eras, conflicts were largely tribal, mostly just small skirmishes over immediate survival. But centuries later, the invention of agriculture changed everything. Human beings started building permanent settlements. We accumulated surplus food, we built walls, and suddenly there was land and wealth actually worth taking. This intense competition for resources led us into ancient times, bringing about the rise of organized armies. And eventually that scaled all the way up in classical antiquity into early kingdoms and empires, fighting these massive campaigns over territory, vital trade routes, and total political control.
Now, those ancient and medieval empires completely reshaped our globe. When powerful civilizations expanded through conquest, they didn't just casually move a line on a map. They forcibly transformed the world. Wars literally dictated the languages we speak today, the religions practiced across the globe, and the very economic and political systems that govern our societies. Entire cultures were absorbed, altered, or in some cases, completely erased by the march of armies.
But as we look back at the grand history of these empires, there's a crucial point we absolutely must remember. Behind every sweeping arrow on a historical map, there were ordinary people. The human cost of this expansion was just staggering. Everyday individuals, we're talking farmers, artisans, families, they were the ones who bore the tragic weight of these conquests, experiencing profound fear, forced displacement, terrible injury, and devastating loss.
Part 2. Industrial and Global Warfare.
That human cost, it only amplified as the world modernized. For most of human history, warfare actually had pretty strict limitations. Armies had to rely on footmen, horses, and whatever local resources they could find. They could really only move as fast as a person could walk. But the Industrial Revolution fundamentally transformed the speed and scale of violence. With railways, mass-producing factories, and modern communication, nations could suddenly deploy tanks, aircraft, submarines, and mass artillery. Industrial warfare allowed destruction to happen on a scale that earlier civilizations couldn't even begin to imagine.
And this industrial capability set the stage for the absolute most devastating period in human history. First, a complex web of global alliances pulled the entire world into the mechanized meat grinder of World War I. The enormous casualties and sheer economic ruin of that war totally fractured international politics. It created the perfect breeding ground for extremist political movements to rise up. And that directly culminated in World War II, which ignited global devastation on an unprecedented, horrifying scale.
We have to pause here and respectfully acknowledge the devastating reality of this era. World War II wasn't just a series of battles between soldiers. It involved the systemic persecution of civilians. It brought about the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust, and it culminated in the unprecedented use of atomic weapons. When the dust finally settled in 1945, our world had been fundamentally, irrevocably changed.
Part 3. The Nuclear Era.
The creation of the atomic bomb forever changed humanity's relationship with war. It introduced a frightening new reality, mutually assured destruction. Basically, this meant that a nuclear attack by one superpower would instantly be met with an overwhelming counterattack, guaranteeing the complete annihilation of both sides. For the very first time in history, a major conflict wouldn't just ruin a few nations. It could literally threaten human civilization itself. The stakes of war expanded far beyond any traditional battlefield.
You might think the end of World War II and the dawn of the nuclear era would put an end to war. But it didn't. Conflict simply fractured and evolved. We saw a massive surge in civil wars, fierce independence struggles as colonized nations fought for their freedom, and proxy wars, where major superpowers funded regional conflicts just to fight each other indirectly. Modern war became much less about two massive armies meeting in a field, and way more about complex ethnic, political, and regional violence.
Part 4. The True Human Cost.
When we talk about war, it's dangerously easy to get completely lost in the strategy, the politics, and the history. But we need to slow down. We have to remember that every single statistic of war represents a real human being. The true human cost is borne by the soldiers who never return. It's borne by the children and the parents left behind. It's in the millions of refugees forced to flee with absolutely nothing. The families torn apart in the chaos, and the generations of young people who lose their homes and their right to an education. Long after the peace treaties are signed, ordinary communities are left to spend decades rebuilding from deep psychological trauma and total economic ruin.
There's a thought that captures this perfectly. A battlefield may have borders. Human suffering does not. The devastation of violence simply doesn't respect international lines drawn on a map. The pain, the economic collapse, and that generational trauma ripple outward, and they affect all of us as a global human family.
Part 5. Why we keep fighting.
Knowing all of this destruction, you really have to wonder, why do human conflicts continue today? Well, there is rarely one simple reason a war begins. It's usually a complex, messy web of causes. Politically, conflicts are driven by the pursuit of power, extreme nationalism, or honestly just the failure of diplomacy, often triggered by leaders making decisions that ordinary people have to live and die with. Economically, we are still fighting over vital resources, territory, and financial interests. And socially, the drivers are deeply human: fear, rigid ideology, unresolved historical grievances, and profound deep-seated mistrust.
Part 6. Choosing peace. But listen, human history isn't solely defined by our conflicts. It is also defined by our tireless, ongoing efforts to resolve them. Now, nobody's claiming that ending war is easy, or that conflict can just be eliminated overnight. But we've built some incredible tools: international diplomacy, peacekeeping organizations, complex treaties, and deep economic cooperation. By investing heavily in education and conflict prevention, we can build bridges instead of walls. And if utilizing these tools prevents even one major conflict, well, it saves an enormous, incalculable number of human lives.
Let's go back to where we started. When we pull back and look at our world from thousands of kilometers above Earth, something amazing happens. The borders disappear. The countries become totally invisible. The armies vanish. From a distance, humanity simply looks exactly like what it is: one single species sharing one very fragile, small planet.
Think about this for a second. For thousands of years, humanity has learned how to build stronger weapons. But perhaps the greatest achievement would be learning how to build a world that needs fewer of them. It's a really powerful reminder of our capacity for change and our genuine potential for a peaceful future.
We share one planet, and we are one human family. The history of conflict is already written, yes, but we have a choice about what comes next. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer to reflect on the true cost of war and the absolute, invaluable worth of peace.